The holographic chamber pulsed with an alien brilliance that hurt Captain Elena Rodriguez's eyes. 217 different species surrounded her, their collective gaze a tangible weight of contempt and ridicule. The translation systems hummed with a cacophony of languages, but the message was universal and crystal clear. Humanity was a joke. Rodriguez stood precisely 1.73 meters tall, her dark skin a stark contrast to the shimmering alien interfaces that surrounded her. Her uniform, a simple black diplomatic suit with subtle Earth Alliance insignia, looked painfully primitive compared to the flowing energy fields and biomechanical attire of the other delegates. Behind her, her team of 4 human representatives looked equally out of place: a quantum physicist, a military strategist, a xenobiological engineer, and a cultural adaptation specialist. The Zorn diplomatic corps took center stage, living crystalline beings that refracted light in impossible geometric patterns. Their lead representative, Ambassador Crystal, was a towering figure that stood nearly 3 meters tall, its prismatic body shifting colors with each contemptuous word. "Humans," Crystal began, its voice a resonant harmonic that translated with perfect clarity, "have consistently demonstrated themselves to be the most primitive, violent, and fundamentally unstable species ever to request membership in the Galactic Concordance." A ripple of laughter spread through the chamber. Holographic displays materialized, showing humanity's most brutal moments: wars, environmental destruction, social conflicts. Images of nuclear explosions, climate disaster zones, and violent historical conflicts played in a devastating montage. Rodriguez remained perfectly still. Her training as a diplomatic captain had prepared her for this moment, a moment designed to humiliate humanity on the grandest stage imaginable. Dr. Akira Chen, the quantum physicist standing just behind her, leaned forward and whispered, "They're making a mistake. They don't understand us at all." Ambassador Crystal continued its verbal evisceration. "Your species has not even achieved stable interstellar travel. Your planetary ecosystem remains critically damaged. Your social structures are fundamentally fractured. And yet you dare to stand here and request full membership in the Galactic Concordance." More laughter. The Mecrani delegation, silicon-based life forms that looked like living crystal sculptures, projected holographic representations of human technological failures, spacecraft explosions, failed colonization attempts, environmental catastrophes. Commander Marcus Okoye, a veteran of Earth's most complex geopolitical conflicts, watched the presentation with a curious calm. His eyes weren't watching the displays. They were studying the alien delegates, reading their body language, analyzing their psychological tells. Dr. Sofia Valdez, the xenobiological engineer, was running complex algorithmic analyses through her neural-linked data interface. To her, this wasn't a humiliation. It was an unprecedented opportunity to study galactic social dynamics. "Humanity's application is not just inappropriate," Crystal proclaimed. "It is an insult to the very principles of the Concordance. We recommend immediate rejection and a century-long quarantine to allow your species to potentially evolve beyond your current state of barbarism." The chamber erupted in approving murmurs. Holographic voting indicators began to materialize, showing overwhelming support for humanity's rejection. Rodriguez knew this moment was critical. Everything depended on her next actions. She stepped forward, her movement precise and controlled. The translation systems picked up her heartbeat, her breathing. Technological marvels that the aliens hadn't even considered possible. "Distinguished members of the Galactic Concordance," Rodriguez began, her voice calm and clear, "we are aware of our limitations. We are also aware of our potential." The laughter died slightly. Something in her tone, a quiet certainty, caught their attention. Commander Okoye activated a small device. Suddenly, the holographic displays shifted. Instead of humanity's failures, they now showed something different. Moments of incredible human adaptation. A team of scientists solving impossible medical challenges. Engineers rebuilding entire ecosystems. individuals performing acts of remarkable courage and innovation. Dr. Chen's quantum algorithms were rewriting the narrative in real time, presenting a version of human history that was dynamic, complex, and fundamentally misunderstood. Crixtel's crystalline form flickered. Was that uncertainty? Rodriguez wasn't finished. We are not here to be what you expect us to be. We are here to show you what we can become. The chamber fell silent. For the first time, the aliens weren't laughing. They were listening. The restricted observation deck was a marvel of technological isolation. Designed to prevent any unauthorized data transmission, it was a fortress of information. Ironically, a challenge that Dr. Akira Chen found irresistible. Chen's fingers danced across holographic interfaces, her neural implants working overtime. The quantum physicist was not just analyzing data. She was deconstructing the entire technological framework of the Galactic concordance. Her facial tattoo, a living mathematical equation that shifted and changed with her thoughts, pulsed with an almost sentient energy. "They're missing something fundamental," she muttered, her voice barely above a whisper. Captain Rodriguez approached, her footsteps silent on the zero-friction surface. "Talk to me, Akira." Chen's eyes, augmented with quantum processing retinal displays, flickered with a dozen simultaneous data streams. The Concordance's defensive technologies are beautiful, absolutely beautiful, and completely, utterly vulnerable. She pulled up a holographic representation that only Rodriguez could see. Intricate energy networks, quantum entanglement systems, and defensive matrices that looked like living crystal sculptures. To most observers, they would appear perfect, a testament to millions of years of technological evolution. To Chen, they were a house of cards. Every single defensive system here is based on prediction and prevention, Chen explained. They've developed technologies that anticipate threats based on historical data. But they've forgotten something crucial about evolution. True survival isn't about prevention. It's about adaptation. Rodriguez understood immediately. Humanity's entire history was a testament to adaptation. From prehistoric tribes surviving ice ages to rebuilding after near-extinction events, humans had always found a way to survive by changing, not by resisting. Commander Marcus Okoye joined them, his cybernetic tactical overlay scanning the holographic displays. "I'm seeing it too. These systems are rigid. Beautiful, but rigid." Dr. Sofia Valdez, the team's xenobiological expert, was running her own analysis. Her augmented senses picked up microscopic variations that others missed. "Look at the quantum resonance patterns," she said, highlighting specific frequency bands. "They're designed to resist known threats. But what about unknown threats?" Rodriguez intercepted a private communication channel, something she wasn't technically supposed to be able to do. The message was encrypted, but her team's adaptive decryption algorithms were working overtime. The message was terrifying. A threat was coming, something that would make all of the Concordance's elaborate defensive systems look like children's toys. "We need to prepare," Rodriguez said quietly, "and no one can know our full capabilities." Chen grinned, a dangerous expression that suggested multiple contingency plans were already forming in her quantum-enhanced mind. "They think we're primitive. Let's use that." The observation deck was a microcosm of humanity's potential. 4 individuals, each representing a different aspect of human capability: strategic leadership, scientific innovation, tactical planning, and biological understanding. Okoye was already mapping potential scenarios. His military background had trained him to see conflict not as a linear progression, but as a dynamic, ever-changing ecosystem of threat and response. Valdez's biological model suggested something even more profound. Humanity's ability to adapt wasn't just technological, it was fundamental to their species' core survival mechanism. Where other civilizations created static defensive systems, humans developed living, breathing strategies that could change in real time. "They're studying us," Chen said suddenly. "Not just our technological capabilities, our psychological responses." Rodriguez nodded. The diplomatic humiliation they'd just experienced wasn't just a political maneuver. It was a test. A test humanity was about to ace in ways no one could predict. Outside the observation deck, the massive orbital station continued its bureaucratic dance. Alien civilizations traded information, maintained complex diplomatic relationships, and maintained their carefully constructed hierarchies. They had no idea what was coming. They had no idea about humanity. Dr. Chen's quantum algorithms were already 6 steps ahead, building predictive models that would reshape understanding of technological adaptation. Commander Okoye was mapping potential conflict scenarios that defied traditional military strategy. Dr. Valdez was developing biological response mechanisms that challenged everything known about species interaction. And Captain Rodriguez, she was preparing to change everything. The observation deck hummed with potential energy, a quiet, almost imperceptible vibration that spoke of something fundamental. Not just a species preparing for a challenge, but a species about to redefine the very concept of challenge itself. Humanity was not going to be underestimated again. The first Void Devourer attack happened without warning. One moment, the Epsilon Hydra system existed, a thriving network of 7 planets, home to the Calixian Confederacy, a civilization that had existed for over 30,000 years. The next moment, it simply ceased to exist. Live feeds across the Galactic Concordance captured the impossible event. Trillions of sentient beings vanished in less than 0.03 seconds. Not destroyed, not obliterated, unmade. Quantum sensors across multiple star systems registered the event as a fundamental reality collapse. Where the Epsilon Hydra system had been, there was now nothing. No debris, no radiation signature, no residual energy, just an absolute void that defied every known physical law. Commander Marcus Okoye watched the transmission in the human delegation's secure briefing room. His cybernetic tactical overlay ran continuous analysis, breaking down the event millisecond by millisecond. "This isn't just destruction," he muttered. "This is systematic deconstruction." Dr. Akira Chen's quantum algorithms were working overtime. Her neural interfaces displayed impossible mathematical models, attempting to reconstruct the event's fundamental mechanics. Equations danced across her facial tattoo, shifting and reformulating with each new data point. "They're not attacking," Chen said, her voice a mixture of scientific excitement and profound concern. "They're studying." Captain Elena Rodriguez understood immediately. This wasn't a typical invasion. This was a systematic, methodical process of understanding and dismantling complex systems. Dr. Sofia Valdez's xenobiological analysis provided another layer of terrifying insight. "Look at the pattern of destruction," she pointed out. The holographic display showed a precise, almost surgical approach to system elimination. They're not just destroying, they're collecting information with each system they erase. The Galactic Concordance was in complete panic. Emergency communication channels erupted with frantic transmissions. The most advanced civilizations, those who had mocked humanity's technological capabilities just weeks earlier, now looked like children confronting a threat beyond their comprehension. The Zorn Imperium's defensive systems, considered the most advanced in known space, collapsed within microseconds when a Void Devourer swarm approached their primary system. Ambassador Krixtal's civilization, those living crystal beings who had humiliated humanity, simply winked out of existence. Commander Okoye's tactical display tracked the Void Devourer's progression. Their movement wasn't random. It was calculated, precise. Each system destruction provided more data, more understanding. They're building a map, Okoye realized. Not just of physical space, of systemic complexity. Chen's quantum models confirmed his hypothesis. The Void Devourers weren't just destroying civilizations. They were creating a comprehensive understanding of how complex systems functioned, how they could be systematically taken apart. Rodriguez understood the profound implications. This was beyond traditional warfare. This was a form of scientific exploration so alien, so fundamentally different from any known concept of conflict, that most species couldn't even comprehend it. The human team worked with a calm that shocked the remaining Concordance delegates. While other species panicked, descended into chaos, the human delegation treated this as a complex problem to be solved. Dr. Valdez was already developing biological response models. Her xenobiological expertise allowed her to see the void devourers not as a military threat, but as a complex biological system with its own internal logic. They consume complexity, she explained, but complexity is also their weakness. The more complex a system becomes, the more potential points of failure it develops. Chen's quantum algorithms began mapping potential intervention strategies. Not defensive systems, those would be useless, but adaptive response mechanisms that could potentially understand and counter the void devourer's systematic deconstruction approach. Commander Okoye was already preparing tactical scenarios that defied traditional military thinking. His strategies weren't about resistance, but about dynamic, real-time adaptation. And Captain Rodriguez, she was preparing humanity's response. The galaxy had laughed at humanity, mocked their capabilities, considered them primitive and unstable. Now, faced with a threat that was systematically erasing entire civilizations, humanity would show them exactly what they were capable of. The void devourers were about to learn that studying a system is not the same as understanding it, especially when that system is humanity. The human research facility was unlike anything the Galactic Concordance had ever seen. Located in the heart of a reconstructed Antarctic research complex, it existed simultaneously in multiple dimensional states, a technological marvel that defied conventional understanding. Dr. Sofia Valdez stood at the center of a holographic storm, her body surrounded by quantum computational matrices that pulsed with living energy. Behind her, massive data streams from multiple interdisciplinary research teams converged: biology, quantum mechanics, computational theory, and adaptive systems engineering. "We're not building a defense," Valdez announced to the small team of human experts. "We're creating a living response system." Her breakthrough came from an unexpected source: human immunology. The human immune system didn't just defend against threats, it learned, adapted, and fundamentally changed its approach with each new encounter. Where other species created static defensive technologies, humans had evolved a dynamic, responsive biological mechanism. Dr. Akira Chen's quantum algorithms translated biological adaptation into computational models. Her facial tattoo, a living mathematical equation, shifted and reformed with each new data point. The void devourer's systematic deconstruction approach was complex, but complexity was also its fundamental weakness. "They consume systemic information," Chen explained, "but they don't truly understand the nature of adaptive complexity." Commander Marcus Okoye reviewed tactical simulations. His cybernetic overlay processed millions of potential scenarios per second. Traditional military thinking would approach this as a problem of resistance. Okoye saw it differently. This was a problem of dynamic, real-time adaptation. Captain Elena Rodriguez oversaw the entire project. Her diplomatic training and strategic thinking provided the framework that transformed individual brilliance into a cohesive response. The facility itself was a testament to human innovation. Quantum entanglement systems intertwined with adaptive biological models, computational matrices that could reshape themselves in real time, technologies that didn't just respond to threats, but anticipated and transformed them. Dr. Valdez's primary breakthrough was a computational model she called the living defense matrix. Unlike traditional defensive systems that tried to predict and prevent threats, this system would actively learn, adapt, and fundamentally change its own structure with each interaction. "We're not creating a weapon," Valdez explained to her team. "We're creating a responsive ecosystem." The first test came unexpectedly. A small void devourer probe approached a human research outpost in the Kuiper Belt, where any other civilization would have attempted to resist or defend. The human team saw an opportunity to study and understand. Chen's quantum algorithms began collecting data at a rate that overwhelmed the void devourer's own information-gathering systems. Okoye's tactical models provided dynamic response patterns that the alien threat couldn't predict. Valdez's biological adaptation models created a computational environment that was fundamentally unpredictable. The probe didn't just fail. It was systematically taken apart, its own information-gathering mechanisms used against it. Rodriguez watched the initial results with a calm that belied the profound significance of what was happening. This wasn't just a technological breakthrough. This was a fundamental reimagining of how complex systems could interact and respond. "They've been studying complexity wrong," Chen said, reviewing the data. "They see complexity as something to be dismantled. We see it as something to be understood and transformed." The human team worked in shifts that would have killed most biological entities. But human potential wasn't just about individual capability. It was about collective adaptation. Each team member brought a unique perspective, a different approach to understanding the fundamental nature of the threat. Okoye's military background provided strategic frameworks. Chen's quantum understanding provided computational models. Valdez's biological expertise provided adaptive mechanisms. Rodriguez's leadership provided the vision that transformed individual brilliance into a collective response. The Void Devourers had made a critical mistake. They had studied humanity's past, the wars, the conflicts, the environmental challenges. But they hadn't understood humanity's fundamental nature. The ability to change, to adapt, to transform. As the first successful test concluded, the team knew they were on the verge of something profound. This wasn't just a defense against the Void Devourers. This was a fundamental reimagining of what adaptive complexity could mean. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity was not a civilization to be studied. We were a force of nature to be reckoned with. The Orion cluster battle would be remembered as the moment everything changed. A small human fleet, cobbled together from experimental technologies, military surplus, and pure human audacity, intercepted a massive Void Devourer swarm. To any external observer, the encounter looked suicidal. 112 human ships against a quantum deconstruction force that had already erased entire civilizations. Captain Elena Rodriguez commanded from the flagship Prometheus, her tactical interface a living, breathing extension of human innovative potential. Around her, the bridge crew moved with a synchronicity that defied traditional military training. Each member was not just an operator, but a dynamic component of a living, adaptive system. Commander Marcus Okoye's tactical algorithms danced across holographic displays. Traditional military strategies were useless against the Void Devourers. This required something fundamentally different, an approach that was part science, part intuition, and entirely human. Dr. Akira Chen's quantum computational systems were integrated directly into the fleet's operating matrix. Her facial tattoo, a living mathematical equation, pulsed with calculations that redefined the very concept of predictive modeling. Where the Void Devourers saw a linear system to be dismantled, Chen saw a dynamic, responsive ecosystem. Dr. Sofia Valdez managed the biological adaptation systems. Her models weren't just defensive, they were transformative. Each ship was more than a weapon. It was a living, learning entity that could reshape its own fundamental structure in real time. The initial moments of the battle defied every known principle of space combat. The Void Devourers approached with their systematic deconstruction approach. Previous encounters had shown a precise, almost surgical method of consuming complex systems. They would analyze, break down, and systematically erase entire civilizations. But humanity wasn't a traditional system. The human ships didn't just defend. They transformed. Quantum entanglement systems allowed instantaneous communication and adaptation. Biological modeling created defensive mechanisms that were fundamentally unpredictable. Computational matrices reshaped themselves with each microsecond of interaction. Where a traditional fleet would have communication delays, tactical hesitation, the human ships moved as a single, living organism. Each ship was both an individual unit and part of a larger adaptive system. The Void Devourer's initial approach was systematic. Precise quantum deconstruction beams targeted each ship, preparing to systematically unmake their complex structures. But something unexpected happened. The human ships didn't just resist. They learned. Each deconstruction attempt was immediately analyzed, understood, and countered. Defensive systems that didn't exist moments before spontaneously emerged. Quantum computational matrices predicted and transformed faster than the void devourers could process. Rodriguez's tactical leadership was extraordinary. She didn't just command. She conducted, like a maestro creating a complex symphony of technological adaptation. The battle wasn't measured in traditional metrics of destruction. It was a profound conversation of systemic complexity. The human fleet wasn't just fighting. They were communicating on a level the void devourers had never encountered. 12 hours into the conflict, something unprecedented occurred. The void devourers, for the first time in their known existence, began to retreat. Not because they were defeated, but because they were confused. Humanity had presented them with a system of such dynamic, unpredictable complexity that their fundamental approach to systemic deconstruction broke down. Live feeds across the Galactic Concordance captured the impossible moment. A small human fleet had not just survived against the quantum predators. They had fundamentally challenged their entire approach to understanding complex systems. As the last void devourer quantum signatures retreated, a profound silence spread across communication channels. The galaxy was no longer laughing. They were listening. The Galactic Concordance was in chaos. Civilizations that had existed for millions of years found themselves facing total extinction. The same delegates who had mocked humanity just months earlier now gathered in emergency sessions, their sophisticated communication networks crackling with desperation. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood at the center of a massive holographic chamber, surrounded by the remnants of galactic leadership. Where once they had laughed, now they looked at humanity with a mixture of hope and terror. "We are not here to save you," Rodriguez began, her voice cutting through the ambient noise of translation systems. "We are here to show you a different way of understanding survival." Dr. Akira Chen's most radical proposal was deceptively simple. Instead of static defensive systems, they would create adaptive networks that could learn and evolve in real time. It was a fundamentally human approach, messy, unpredictable, but breathtakingly effective. The surviving alien representatives looked like broken machines. The Mecrani delegation, once proud silicon-based life forms, were now reduced to fragmentary quantum signatures. The Zorn Imperium's crystalline civilization existed only in scattered memory cores. Hundreds of advanced civilizations had been reduced to technological refugees. Commander Marcus Okoye presented the first comprehensive response strategy. Unlike traditional military doctrine, this was not a plan of resistance, but a framework of adaptive transformation. Each defensive mechanism was designed to be fundamentally unpredictable, to learn and change with each interaction. Dr. Sofia Valdez's biological adaptation models provided the foundation. Her research showed that true survival wasn't about prevention, but about continuous, dynamic transformation. The human approach drew from biological systems, immune responses, evolutionary adaptation, complex ecological interactions. "Your civilizations have become too rigid," Valdez explained to the shell-shocked galactic representatives. "You've optimized for stability at the cost of adaptability." Humanity's greatest strength has always been our ability to change. The proposal was revolutionary. Adaptive defense networks that could fundamentally reshape themselves. Computational systems that didn't just process information, but understood it. Technological frameworks that learned and evolved with each interaction. The alien delegates had no choice. Their own systems had failed catastrophically. The void devourers had exposed fundamental weaknesses in their approach to complexity and survival. Rodriguez's diplomatic expertise was crucial. She wasn't just presenting a technological solution. She was offering a philosophical transformation of how complex systems could interact and survive. "We're not offering a weapon," she told the assembled representatives. "We're offering a new way of understanding existence. Chen's quantum algorithms began integrating with the surviving galactic communication networks. Where previous systems were static and predictable, these new networks were living, breathing entities. They didn't just transmit information, they understood it. Okoye's tactical models provided frameworks for dynamic response. Military strategy was transformed from a linear concept of attack and defense to a complex, adaptive ecosystem of interaction. Valdez's biological models showed how complex systems could maintain integrity through continuous, dynamic transformation. It was a radical departure from the static, optimized systems that had dominated galactic technological development. The human team worked with a calm that bordered on the supernatural. While other civilizations panicked, they saw an opportunity for fundamental transformation. Emergency communication channels began adopting human-developed adaptive technologies. Quantum communication networks were redesigned. Defensive systems were completely reimagined. The Void Devourers had made a critical mistake. They had studied civilizations as static systems to be dismantled. Humanity showed them that true complexity was not about fixed structure, but about continuous dynamic adaptation. As the first adaptive networks came online, something profound happened. The surviving galactic civilizations began to change. They were learning what humanity had always known. Survival is not about resistance. It's about transformation. The final confrontation was more than a battle. It was a fundamental reimagining of conflict itself. Captain Elena Rodriguez piloted the experimental ship Quantum Nexus, a vessel that was less a traditional spacecraft and more a living computational ecosystem. Her neural interface merged with the ship's adaptive systems, creating something that defied traditional understanding of technology and biological interaction. Around her, a multinational human task force prepared for the most critical moment in galactic history. This wasn't just about defending against the Void Devourers. This was about demonstrating a completely new approach to systemic complexity. Dr. Akira Chen's quantum algorithms had been working for months, creating predictive models that went beyond traditional computational thinking. Her facial tattoo, a living mathematical equation, now covered most of her visible skin, representing the most complex computational matrix ever conceived. They're not just a threat, Chen explained to the assembled team. They're a complex system seeking understanding. Our job is to provide that understanding in a way they cannot predict. Commander Marcus Okoye's tactical models have been refined through thousands of simulated scenarios. Traditional military strategy was obsolete. This required something more. An approach that was part scientific exploration, part philosophical dialogue, part pure human audacity. Dr. Sofia Valdez had developed biological adaptation models that transformed the entire human fleet into a living, breathing ecosystem. Each ship was more than a weapon. It was a complex adaptive system that could learn, transform, and respond in ways the Void Devourers could not comprehend. The approach was quintessentially human, messy, unpredictable, fundamentally innovative. As the Void Devourer swarm approached, something extraordinary happened. Instead of presenting a traditional defensive formation, the human fleet began to change. Ships merged and separated. Quantum computational matrices reshaped themselves in real time. Defensive systems emerged and transformed faster than the alien threat could process. Rodriguez wasn't just commanding. She was conducting, creating a complex symphony of technological and biological adaptation. The battle defied every known principle of space combat. Where previous encounters had been about destruction, this was a profound conversation of systemic complexity. The human fleet didn't just fight. They communicated on a level that challenged the fundamental understanding of conflict. Quantum entanglement systems allowed instantaneous communication and adaptation. Biological modeling created defensive mechanisms that were fundamentally unpredictable. Computational matrices reshaped themselves with each microsecond of interaction. The Void Devourers had studied humanity's past, the conflicts, the technological limitations, but they hadn't understood humanity's fundamental nature. The ability to change, to adapt, to transform. Rodriguez's ship penetrated the heart of the Void Devourer cluster. Traditional weapons would have been useless. Instead, she used something more profound. A computational matrix that didn't just resist, but understood and transformed. For the first time, the Void Devourers encountered a system that was more than a target. It was a living, learning entity that could reshape its own fundamental structure in real time. Hours became days. The battle was less about destruction and more about a fundamental dialogue of systemic complexity. Human ships merged, separated, transformed. Quantum computational systems created defensive mechanisms that didn't exist moments before. The Void Devourers began to retreat, not because they were defeated, but because they were fundamentally challenged. Humanity had presented them with a system of such dynamic, unpredictable complexity that their entire approach to systemic deconstruction broke down. As the last quantum signatures of the Void Devourers retreated, a profound silence spread across galactic communication networks. They had not just survived. They had redefined the very concept of survival. The reconstruction of the Galactic Concordance happened not in grand chambers or through traditional diplomatic channels, but in a series of dynamic, adaptive working sessions that redefined the very concept of galactic governance. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood before the reassembled representatives, no longer the diplomatic outcast, but the architect of a new galactic paradigm. Behind her, the human team that had saved civilization looked more like a group of revolutionary scientists than traditional military or diplomatic personnel. Dr. Akira Chen's quantum computational models had become the new standard for communication and defensive systems across known space. Her living mathematical tattoos were now studied by xenobiological researchers as a breakthrough in computational thinking. The same delegates who had once mocked humanity now sought to understand the fundamental principles of human adaptive thinking. Commander Marcus Okoye had transformed military strategy from a linear concept of attack and defense to a complex, adaptive ecosystem of interaction. Galactic military academies now taught human-developed principles of dynamic response and systemic adaptability. Dr. Sofia Valdez's biological adaptation models had revolutionized understanding of technological and biological systems. Her research showed that true survival was not about resistance, but about continuous, dynamic transformation. The threat of the Void Devourers had been fundamentally altered. What was once seen as a destructive force was now understood as a complex system seeking understanding. Humanity had not just defended against them. They had opened a dialogue that transformed the very nature of the threat. "We are not here to lead," Rodriguez told the assembled representatives, her voice carrying the weight of humanity's journey. "We are here to show what's possible when a species refuses to accept limitations." The Galactic Concordance was no longer a static bureaucratic entity. It had become a dynamic, adaptive network that could learn, grow, and transform. The rigid hierarchies that had defined galactic civilization for millennia were replaced by a more fluid, responsive system. Alien civilizations that had existed for millions of years found themselves learning from a species they had once considered primitive. Human schools of thought, focused on adaptability, innovation, and dynamic problem-solving, became required study for diplomatic and scientific corps across the galaxy. The technological breakthroughs were profound. Quantum communication systems that could adapt in real time. Defensive technologies that were living, breathing entities. Computational matrices that didn't just process information, but understood it. But the most significant transformation was philosophical. Humanity had shown that complexity was not something to be controlled or dismantled, but something to be understood and embraced. The human approach, messy, unpredictable, fundamentally innovative, became the new paradigm of galactic thinking. The civilizations that had once laughed now looked to humans with a mixture of respect, wonder, and a newfound humility. They had learned that technological advancement was not about achieving a perfect, static state, but about maintaining the ability to change, to adapt, to transform. Rodriguez reflected on the journey. From diplomatic humiliation to the saviors of galactic civilization, humanity had demonstrated something profound. Their strength was not in technological superiority, but in their fundamental approach to existence, a willingness to change, to learn, to grow. As the first adaptive galactic governance systems came online, something extraordinary happened. The surviving civilizations began to truly understand what humanity had always known. Survival is not about resistance. It's about transformation. The galaxy would never be the same. And humanity. Humanity was just getting started.